Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears here, and today I'm sharing some new products from Spellbinders. There are 4 layered stencils with coordinating dies, and these stencils make for such easy card fronts. They have a fun pattern on the front as well as a greeting such as make a wish, hello, for you, and thank you. So here's a look at the products that I'm going to be working with today. There are the layered stencils. These are 4 layer stencils. This one is the Make-A-Wish Confetti stencil. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up here just so that you can see what is included. And each stencil set is similar in that it has the same amount of stencils, but it has a different pattern and a different sentiment. So this is the Make-A-Wish, and it has some confetti, so it has some circles all over, and it also has a mask for the sentiment. So on the back of the package, this is what it looks like once it's all put together. You can see how colorful it is just by varying up the inks. And then there is a coordinating die set, so if you wanted just to use the sentiment by itself, or if you wanted to create the sentiment by itself and then pop it up on the confetti background, you can do that with the die set. So here is the Hello stencil. I'm not going to take this one out of the package. I just want to show you what it looks like. Remember, everything in the package is very similar to what I just showed you. And it also has the coordinating dies. And with the coordinating dies, there are also some dies to cut out some flowers. And the flowers are part of the stencil. Here is the For You. And this has a beautiful floral print all around, and then it has the sentiment for you, and there are matching dies available with some dies to cut out the flowers as well. And then the last one is the thank you, and here's what it looks like. So it has the words and the matching dies with some dies to cut out the flowers. So again, there's 4 stencils with the coordinating dies in this layered stencils collection, and I will have product links down in the description box below. So I'm going to make 2 cards today, and the first one I'm going to use is the Make-A-Wish, and I want to show you that the stencils are numbered. At the bottom left hand corner, I actually took my Sharpie and I actually wrote the numbers on there because they were really hard to see. So I cut down a piece of cardstock to 4.5 by 6 inches, which is the size of the actual stencil, and I just lined the cardstock up with the stencil. And I'm using the stencil layer 1, and I'm using some Scrapbookcom inks. This ink is the Carnival pink. I like the Scrapbookcom inks because they come in color families with 4 different colors in a color family. You'll see that I'll be using some of the purples there. I have them there on the left side of my mat, and I like that they come in a light, and then there's a little bit darker, and then a little bit darker than that, and then finally the darkest, and they're numbered 1 through 4, from 1 being the lightest to 4 being the darkest. And I like using these with stencils just because I can lay the lightest color down and then build upon that. So with the purples here, I'm using the Parisian purple. This is actually the number 2. I don't think I even used the number 1 on this stencil. So this is the number 2 in the purple family, and I'm inking it up here on the second layer. And with this stencil, I'm making a 1-layer card. So everything is going to be basically a flat card. There's not going to be any dimension on here, and I'm just stenciling up all of the layers. And then the next card that I do, I'm going to show you how you can actually take the greeting and stencil it on a different piece of cardstock, cut it out with the dies, and then pop it up. So you have a couple options with these stencils. So here with this first card, I'm showing you just how to make it a 1-layer card, quick and easy, by just doing some stenciling all on the same piece of cardstock. So here I'm using stencil number 3, and I'm coming in with the darker ink. This is the number 3, which is the crushed velvet in the violet color family, and I'm just going over this with that crushed velvet ink, which is a little bit darker than the previous one. When you're using layered stencils, I suggest using your lightest color ink on the bottom or on your first stencil that you lay down. That way on the next stencil you can add a darker ink and you'll be able to see it easily. If you put a dark color first and then you try to put a light color over top of that, you're really not going to be able to see the light color much. But by putting a light color on the bottom and then a darker color on the top, you'll be able to see it. And actually I do come in with the soft lavender, which is the #1 ink in this purple color family, and I ink up this last stencil, which this is just the shadow. It's the shadow of the sentiment, so you'll see a little bit of a shadow underneath the words, and then there's a few of the confetti dots that I do go over with the soft lavender. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and I'm going to add the mask over the words. So if you wanted to maybe ink up the background, maybe just put a light coat of ink over top of those dots, you can add the mask so that your sentiment stays intact. But here I'm just putting some gold ink on my mat, spritzing it with water, taking a paintbrush and just flicking it on the background, and that ink is going to show up everywhere except for on top of my sentiment, because the mask for the Make-A-Wish is blocking that ink from going on top of it. So there's my background, and if you wanted to, you can actually just cut this out by using the shadow die, but I'm not going to do that with this card. Instead, like I said, it's going to be a 1-layer card. So I'm just taking a Spellbinders rectangle nesting die, centering it over top of the stenciled background. I'm going to add some mint tape, and I'll run this through my die cut machine to cut out my layer for my A2 size card. And I'll set that aside, and in the meantime I cut down another piece of white cardstock to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I'm just adding some of that Carnival pink ink along the edge, and only along the edge because this is going to be my mat for my stenciled background. And I added the ink to the sides because that's the same color ink that I used on my card, and I wanted everything to match. So after adding the stenciled background to the mat, I'm adding it to an A2 size card. So my card measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I'm going to take some of the Scrapbookcom pops of color. This is the gold glitter pops of color, and I'm just going to add a little bit of dimension to the top of the card by adding the pops of color. The pops of color is a liquid embellishment, and you can just squeeze a little bit on your card, and you can use it just like adhesive gems, but I don't have any more of the gold adhesive gems in my stash, so I'm just going to add the pops of color and it will dry hard. So I'm just going to set this card aside to dry, and you can see how pretty that is close up. And that will complete my first card using the layered Make-A-Wish confetti stencil. So for my next card, I'm going to use the Floral Hello stencil. So I did cut another piece of the cardstock to 4 1/2 by 6 inches. Again, that's the same size as the stencil. So I added the stencil to the card, and I'm also adding the mask, and the mask will fit perfectly inside of the stencil. I did add some pixie spray to the back of the stencil so that that mask will adhere to my cardstock. I didn't want it to move, so the pixie spray really helps it. And what I'm doing here is I'm just using some of the Scrapbookcom mint tape to mask off parts of the stencil openings, because right now I just want to color the leaves with this Caribbean ink from Scrapbook.com. And I just masked off the flowers because I didn't want the flowers to have this color ink. So once I was done with the Caribbean ink, I removed the mask from all of the leaves, and then I'm going to take another color ink and color up the flowers. So this ink is the orange spice ink, and I'll color up some of the flowers with the orange, and then I'm also going to bring in some of the lantern light. And notice I'm kind of switching between blending brushes. I have a larger blending brush, and I also have a finger dauber. It's really how much control you want when you're doing your ink blending. I did find that using the smaller blending brush to get into the smaller sections of the stencil really helped, so that I didn't go over top of another opening that I didn't want colored in that same color ink. So it really depends on you. If you want to color everything up in the same color, the larger blending brush might be better. But if you really want to change things up by adding different color inks to different parts of the stencil, sometimes using the smaller blending brush will help with that. So here again, I'm just masking off parts of this stencil so that I can get a different color ink in certain places. Again, I'm just using the orange spice and the lantern light. So the flowers for this stencil are all going to be the yellow and the orange colors. I'm also going to come in with a little bit of a darker orange, which is the autumn leaves, and I can go over some of the accent parts of the flowers with the darker orange. For example, the center or the lines on the flowers, I'll put in a darker orange just so that there is some contrast between the different colors. And if you need to refer to the actual picture to see what you're looking at, go ahead and do that, because I do that quite frequently to see exactly what I'm coloring. Because sometimes when you're looking at a stencil that has little openings, sometimes it might not be that easy to really see what you're looking at, and if you look at the picture, it makes it easier to see so you know what color you want to ink where. Okay, so the openings again, I'm actually adding that darker orange. And I'm just going to continue in this manner until this entire stencil is inked up, and then I will move on to the next layer. So now I'm on the fourth layer, and notice that the hello mask is still in the same spot. I haven't touched it. So when I applied that at the very beginning, I left that mask on because I don't want that area to be inked up. So with this card, I'm actually going to be inking up the word hello on a different piece of cardstock so that I can die cut it and then pop it up on this card front so that it will have a little bit of dimension. And what's nice about this is that you can also use that word hello on any card that you want a sentiment that says hello. It doesn't necessarily have to go with this flower. Okay, so I did notice that I had a few areas that I did not ink up. I noticed that there was a couple of yellow flowers that didn't have a center. So I'm just going back in and just adding the ones that I missed with the orange ink. Look how pretty that background is. So next I'm going to work on the sentiment. So I have a white piece of cardstock, and I'm going to spray the stencil with some pixie spray. It's good to use a pixie spray. It is a low-tack adhesive that you put on the back of your stencils. That way they will stick to the cardstock. They're not going to tear the cardstock, but it does stick to the cardstock so that like the middle part where that empty space is for the word hello, so those edges when you're using your ink blending tool, they don't come up and you don't get ink underneath the stencil. Okay, so here I'm just masking off the surrounding area. You don't have to do this if you have a smaller ink blending tool and you know you're not going to get ink beyond where the stencil is for the outline of the word hello. But I'm going to go ahead and use my mint tape just to mask off because I want to be sure I don't get ink on any of the other open areas, because when I die cut this, some of the open areas of the stencil surrounding the word hello are a little bit close to where the cut line would be for the die. So I just want to make sure I don't get ink there so that it doesn't show up when I die cut the word out. So I went ahead and inked up the first layer with the daffodil, actually it's the lantern light ink, which is a very light yellow. And then I removed that stencil, lined up the second stencil, and for this stencil I'm going to use the Caribbean ink. And again, I'm just masking off the areas surrounding the word hello, and then I'll go ahead and ink it up. So when I added the ink to the letters, I am using like a teal ink, but it's actually making the letters turn green because the teal ink on top of the yellow is making it look green, which is okay. But just so you guys know that when you're layering up these stencils, just keep that in mind that some of the inks that you use, depending on what's underneath, your top layer could end up looking a different color than what you're actually putting down. So this next stencil, I'm coming in with a little bit of a darker teal, and this is the Deep Sea, just to make that stand out a little bit darker on top. So you can kind of see with this stencil when I said earlier about adding the light color at the bottom and then building up your ink colors from light to medium to dark, because you can see the darker ones easier on the lighter colors underneath. So now with this last layer, this is the shadow, and I'm coming in with the Daffodil ink, which is a little bit darker ink than I initially had down. So you can see the difference between the light and the darker yellow. So now I'm just going to die cut this word out, and if I wanted to use this on another card, I could, because I just stenciled up a sentiment and I can use this on any card I want. But I'm just going to die cut it out. I will be putting it in the center of this card, and first I went ahead and used that layering die to center up the layer. And the word hello, I actually put foam on the back so that it pops up and there's some dimension on the card. And you'll be able to see it a little bit better after I finish putting this card together. So I did put this on an A2 size card base, and I'm going to add some of the Spellbinders crystal mix to my card just to add a little bit of sparkle. You can also use some pops of color if you have that instead of some gems. So you can see how pretty this looks. Here I'm going to hold it to the side so you can see that dimension with the sentiment. I created one more card off camera. This is the Floral Thank You stenciled die set. And for that card, I did use some Distress Oxide inks in some teals and pinks. So I created the 3 cards. And don't forget, there is one other stencil set, and that is the For You stencil set. And all of these products will be listed down below. So if you're interested in purchasing any of these, I always appreciate when you use my affiliate links because it does support my channel. If you like this video, please click that thumbs up button. And if you like videos like this, don't forget to click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications so that you'll be notified when I release new videos. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.